Tomorrow War is the latest film to come from Paramount and Skydance. This was originally supposed to be a theatrical release film, and even though things are kind of getting back to normal, we have more movies coming to the theater, and people are slowly kind of getting more interested in them again. This is an original IP that is a really big budget sci-fi movie, so the potential of that flopping is obviously a really big one, especially since right now it is proven that people are really only going out to the theater to see stuff like A Quiet Place 2, The Conjuring, or even F9. So of course the theatrical plans for this movie were scrapped, and they gave it over to Jeff Bezos over at Amazon. This is now an Amazon original, and this movie takes place in 2022. All of a sudden, a portal from 2051 opens up. A bunch of soldiers come out saying that they are fighting a future war, and they are losing at it. They're fighting something that's not human, and they need more soldiers. They're running out, so they draft people from this time period to bring them to the future. One of them eventually turns out to be Chris Pratt, who is a family man, just a science teacher who gets thrown into this situation, and he has to try to survive by the skin of his teeth against these creatures, trying to get back home to his family, but also save their future. I was actually pretty interested in this movie when I saw who wrote the script, and I know that because it's a big studio movie, you know, certain things about the scripts can change, but just looking at their past two projects, I had not seen them, but I saw that they weren't well received. So if you're just gonna go off of that, just like, oh, the past two movies they did aren't very good, so obviously this won't, you know, that you might not have ever been excited for this movie. But the thing that kind of won me over as far as being a little bit anticipated for it is the fact that Chris McKay was going to be behind the director's chair, and I was like, holy shit, that's the guy who did the Lego Batman movie. The Lego Batman guy is going to do this like sci-fi action movie that now stars and is executive produced by Chris Pratt. That's really interesting. The thing that I was really excited for about that is that I thought Chris McKay did a really fantastic job with the Lego Batman movie. He made something that was really entertaining and funny, but at the end of the day, it was also a little dramatic. They showed me a side of Batman that I honestly hadn't seen up until that point, or it just never registered with me, and it actually, you know, got me feeling a little emotional. So I thought, you know, if he's gonna be behind this movie, and Chris Pratt, some of his best movies and roles are when he gets to be like, you know, action star, but he's a goofball, and there's a good emotional side to him. Emmett Brokowski from Lego Movie and Peter Quill in Guardians of the Galaxy. This could be a really great team up and could turn out to be something really good. And I can definitely say that Chris McKay's transition from animation to live action filmmaking is honestly quite impressive. All of the action sequences are very well helmed, and they're all fairly intense. I was honestly quite surprised at how good they were. I guess it's not too different when you plan out some of these things, like, you know, you're coming from an animation field where you obviously have to storyboard, you have to plan your shots. Same thing applies to a live action movie, especially one where you work with CG creatures, you know, crafting sequences around that. So I'm sure there's aspects of this production that were right up in his wheelhouse, but, you know, I was still nonetheless impressed with the action filmmaking he was able to pull off here. It looks really great. Hats off to the visual effects team. Everything about this movie visually looked really fantastic, technically speaking. There's like one shot that you get of these creatures in the beginning. Like, you see one, it's the first like big shot of the creature, and it's like well up there, you can see all the details, and it's like panting like a dog, and it's like, oh my god, like that's actually kind of menacing. And then you have like a full action scene with them, and they seem like unbeatable, like unstoppable in every single way. So you're honestly kind of thinking like, I know Chris Pratt is probably going to be the hero of this movie, but I don't see how he could be yet, because he's not doing anything to him. It actually added a lot of suspense to a lot of these action scenes, because you recognize they move incredibly fast. They're virtually unstoppable except for like one spot where you have to get them specifically, but that's such a specific place to get them, especially considering their build. You know, it was really good, and it's backed by a Lauren Balfe score that I think really added to the entertainment that you can have with a lot of these action sequences. As far as the technical aspects of this movie go, I have no qualms with it at all. I also really was surprised by Yvonne Strahovski in this movie. Like, going into it, I knew she was in it, but I thought she was just gonna be like, I'm in charge of this operation, and, you know, this is what's what, and that's what's that. You know, like that kind of role. But she was actually able to infuse some drama in there that I actually really liked. You know, like that character ran the risk of, like, you know, because of this kind of movie, it could either feel a little too corny, you know, maybe just a little too much. But I thought she did a really great job of balancing it, you know, acting it out really well in a tone that perfectly fits her character in this film. I will go as far to say that her character is like easily the best one, in my opinion, of everyone in this cast. You know, she did a really great job playing it, and adding in that drama was actually really necessary, because I was actually kind of getting more into the plot through that kind of interesting dynamic. I was honestly really interested in a lot of the story potential that was added into this movie, like Chris Pratt, for example, some stuff that he experiences when he's in the future. No spoilers, but it's all stuff that's kind of meant to help him kind of overcome some drama that he has had with his own father, played by J.K. Simmons, who is really good in this movie. There's one line he says where it's a fairly simple line, but the way he said it in the context of the scene, I was like, fuck yeah, J.K. Simmons, you got it, dude. But I recognize that that's what they were trying to do. You know, you're going to the future to kind of resolve some certain issues that you are having in the present day. I really do like that aspect of this story. And this is where we start to segue into negatives with this, because I felt like the movie was kind of at conflict with itself a lot of the time. As much as I really do like a lot of the story potential that comes with a premise like this, a lot of the stuff they tried to do to make it interesting, and some of it is, I couldn't help but feel like a lot of it kind of fell flat, and we'll talk about that in just a second. The first thing I wanted to mention, though, is that a lot of the humor in this movie surprisingly does not land. Chris Pratt is a funny guy, Sam Richardson is a funny guy, and it's directed by a man who was involved with an animated comedy. I thought this was going to be like a pretty, safe bet that this was going to have some good humor, and I just found a lot of the lines just thudding, nothing like embarrassing or like cringy where you're like, ooh, God, like cut that out of the movie. Ooh, what are you doing? It's just all stuff that like when the actors are saying this, you can tell that it's supposed to come across as like a funny line. Like, yeah, well, I'm going to say this right now and that's the joke. And that's supposed to be it. And it's every single time pretty much. It was just kind of like a nothing response for me. I was just kind of like, oh, I wish this was funnier. Did Chris McKay have a hand in the humor of this script? Like, did he do any rewrites and add in this humor? Because I feel like it could be better, It doesn't feel like the stuff that's in the Lego Batman movie. I don't know. I also wish that they added a bit more of a connection with a lot of the other supporting characters that Chris Pratt eventually meets on his squad when he gets drafted. Like, obviously, he has like a little heart-to-heart with Sam Richardson. You get to know him a little more. Sam Richardson is fine in this movie performance-wise. It's just if you want a really great Sam Richardson, check out Werewolves Within, baby. That's a fantastic movie that he's honestly amazing in. Other than him and Edwin Hodge, who is like, he's the troubled soldier. He's been on 3 tours, and this is, this is nothing new to him. He's just badass, ready to go. He might murder his own friends. But then everyone else is like, just a background actor, and you have 2 other people that had some semi-humorous kind of quibble at the beginning that you're supposed to know because mild spoilers, they're gonna die. And it's not a requirement that you need like every single character that Chris Pratt is gonna be working with to be like a 3-dimensional complex character, or you have to know every single person's name in the squad. But I feel like it would have been nice, especially considering what transpired after that. And even later on in the movie, I know this movie has gotten comparisons to Edge of Tomorrow, but it definitely, I think they're fair. I think they're pretty fair comparisons, especially near the end when they set up the final battle in a way that felt similar to Edge of Tomorrow. But the difference with Edge of Tomorrow is that Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt had partnered themselves with characters that we had been seeing when Tom Cruise was going through a loop, and we'd seen them in different perspectives. So you as an audience member felt a connection with them. But this final battle has a lot of other supporting characters that you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I guess you were in this movie. I feel absolutely nothing, and I don't feel good about your chances of survival. So at least some kind of connection would have helped with some of the suspense, or at least some kind of emotional response when bad things start to happen. Even in that final battle, there's like some staging stuff that they do. Like at one point, it seems like Chris Pratt and others kind of teleport to a place they need to be, but without really properly explaining how they were able to beat said creature. I don't know, it was just kind of weird to me, especially like how they cap off that scene with another moment where I was like, hey, where the fuck were you? You know what I mean? There's also a thing that Chris Pratt becomes very concerned about when he's in the future. And for me, like obviously, I have not been in this position before. And I'm also not the kind of character that Chris Pratt is, obviously. There's a lot of differences there. He's a science teacher. He's also ex-military. He's a dad, different life experiences there. But he brings up something that he's concerned about, and I was just sitting there like, dude, you're in a time travel movie, and I don't see why you're concerned about this, because it just seems so pointless in the grand scheme of things. I don't know I don't understand the motive here. It just felt like a faux emotional kind of thing, like, oh, you have to get, like, emotionally invested, so, look, Chris Pratt is worried about da-da-da. And it's like, I'm not. You know, I don't connect with his worry at all. I don't understand why he is. I thought they opened the movie weird, and then also bookended the movie weird. Like, the movie opens with a shot that you're just gonna see again later, so it's like, what's the point of opening the movie like this? Oh, you have, because this is a big budget studio movie, you have to open with something exciting, a bang, to get people immediately invested. But they're just gonna flash back to like a different time where, you know, everything is out of context, and then eventually you're just gonna see this again. So like, you could have just saved it, you know, like you could have just opened this movie a little different. I don't know, but then it also ends in a way where everything is resolved and there's an end narration going like, now I understand what I was supposed to learn the whole time, and it's like, fuck off. There has been no other narration from this character. The only other narration we got was like opening credits, you know, exposition through newscast. That's not narration, no, that's exposition through newscast. But for the longest time, I was kind of like stuck at like, you know what, it's got its issues, but you know, B-, like a fair little B- I think will do for this movie, because, you know, I am thoroughly entertained by a lot of these action scenes and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, like a day later, because I watched this Friday, so yesterday, all of a sudden I was thinking about it, you know, kind of like going through my mind, like, okay, tomorrow I'm doing the Tomorrow War, and it just kind of clicked with me, like, hold on, there's something else about this that bothers me. In fact, there might be a couple other things that bother me about this. So let's go over it. First off, there are just things that I was personally kind of a little disappointed in, like Betty Gilpin, who recently proved herself to be a fairly amazing action star in The Hunt last year. I know not too many people saw that, but she's incredible in The Hunt. In this movie, she is cast as a concerned wife. And I guess you need that. You need a concerned wife for the Chris Pratt character. But it's just, I don't know, I was disappointed that she was that character. She could have been something else, and I would have been a little more excited, but obviously she still acts it very well. You know, she is legitimately concerned for a good reason, so it's not like anything about that is inherently bad when you watch the movie. It's just I saw a missed opportunity with the casting. There's also a missed opportunity with the other stuff that they're trying to do with, like, making a critical statement about drafting, about the military government. Throughout the movie, there's these spots where they don't portray it in the best light. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's actually kind of interesting to see them actually kind of take jabs like that. But when the movie ends, it kind of more so feels like a backdrop to the more personal dad-daughter, dad-to-dad story that's going on. And it's like, okay, like it's not, once again, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing it like that, because once again, you are showing these darker sides right here, like it's playing out in the plot, but I wish that maybe they were trying to take a bit more of a critical kind of stance. But I was thinking, like, it probably would have been a more interesting movie if this was actually more so like a satirical look at like a guy going in like an action movie, like undying allegiance to his country, to his government, and then once he gets there, he starts to do things that make him kind of question his own morals and kind of question what it is his government is asking him to do. I feel like that probably would have been a more interesting movie, but that's not the movie they're trying to do. So there's like small personal things that I was looking at and I was disappointed in, but in the movie there's nothing too inherently bad about them, but because of everything else about the movie, they kind of stuck out a bit more. But going back to like the time travel aspect of it all, you know, the premise of the movie, eventually I kind of started to pick holes in the premise as well, because all of a sudden it kind of clicked with me, like, you know what? In this future war where they're losing, they have also invented time travel, and the only thing they think of to use it for is to draft people 30 years ago and just have them die because they don't have the proper training to go up against these things that they have never ever gone up against. You know, it put them in like regular military gear and guns, like not even like advanced sci-fi tech or anything like that. That's the thing that they decide to do with the time travel. Like, you know, I all of a sudden started thinking, like, why is it they're doing that? Like, I don't think there is really even a good reason to do it. Like, logically, I'm trying to let it go. I'm just trying to say, like, hey, it's a movie, but all of a sudden my brain started to think, like, what if they, like, actually sent back like a message and that's it, you know, like they gave the message, maybe dropped off some of their tech and some of their knowledge, like you guys will have a head start now, and then they just left, you know, like that would definitely alter the future, that would alter their timeline. Certainly that's that's what would happen. Also, the way that some characters figure out the origins of the creatures later on, it's supposed to be a big reveal, one of those big reveal moments where they're like, we're the only ones that know about this and we need to get there right away. it seems fairly simple how they figure it out. So I was wondering, like, how come these guys from the future can't, like, no group from the future is like, hey, I got a question about this. Like, it would be pretty helpful if they could figure it out in the future and then let them know, like, hey, by the way, in your time, you can actually stop this from ever happening if you just do this. Maybe there's an excuse built in that I missed because, you know, they do offer in a couple lines of dialogue as far as, like, you know, questions regarding the time travel from, like, Sam Richardson. They're just like, you know, blah, 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 blah. Like, forget about it. And I was like, maybe there's some excuse in this movie that I've forgotten about because it was delivered in a bad exposition excuse line of dialogue. But I feel like it's a fair criticism because eventually when they start drafting people, I thought that it was going to be like, because Chris Pratt is a science teacher, they're drafting people who have military experience first, and then they're getting to everybody else, you know what I mean? Like the people that are inexperienced, like a technician or a science teacher in Chris Pratt's case. But then eventually when they get to Chris Pratt, they finally get him. It's like, you have past military experience. And he's like, that's right. And then I was like, wouldn't he have been, like, drafted, like, a little sooner then? Like, it's been, like, at least a year since they showed up in 2022, initially, so, like, wouldn't they have drafted him maybe sooner because of that past military experience? I don't know. Like, man, I don't know. It just started to make me question the whole thing of it. And that's an aspect of Chris Pratt's character that I think undercuts what could have been, like, a more, like, hey, I'm a relatable, down-to-earth guy who's just kind of, you know, I'm just kind of an average Joe. But then they also add, it feels like an afterthought. It feels like, oh, we can give him some past military experience so Chris Pratt can look cool and not look like a total nerd like Sam Richardson. He can be the badass of the movie. Once again, that's something that's also not inherently bad about the character writing beforehand, but it was something that I thought about. And also, my final thing I'll say negatively about this movie is Chris Pratt, unfortunately. I think he's totally fine performance-wise. You know, I honestly do enjoy a lot of his movies. Obviously, more so the Lego movie for Emmett and Guardians of the Galaxy for Star-Lord. I really do like when those movies kind of push the emotional boundaries for him, when he actually, you know, he's an action hero, but, you know, he's got a heart. He's a goofball, you know, but he also has feelings, emotions. I'm totally fine with watching him in, like, The Magnificent Seven, or even as, like, Owen Grady in Jurassic World, where he's just, like, the, you know, smarmy, like, action star who's just kind of having a blast. You know, like, you know, he carries that pretty well, but I like those other performances where he really pushes it. And this movie, it seemed like there are aspects of it where they understood that, where they try to add in this drama with him, where they try to get him to act kind of emotional, but also give him some wit. But, you know, I already mentioned the humor doesn't particularly land, and I felt a lot of the drama with him was unsupported by an opening scene that doesn't really feel like they painted a good picture for why he feels so unsatisfied. That's kind of the thing that becomes important as the movie goes on. The movie opens, he doesn't get the job that he wanted. Womp womp, that's a big bummer. And he goes off like, I'm gonna do something special one day. You know, I was meant to do something important, and that's my whole thing. And that's kind of it for a while. And I was like, okay, I can kind of see that. But eventually, later on in the movie, he learns some stuff. And that's all I'll say, that's all I'll put it. And I was like, you know, in order to make that actually seem believable, in order for me to fully be, like, blown away by what you're kind of dropping, you need a better start. You need, like, a fully fleshed out start of his life to fully see that, you know? Like, there's a lot of talk of him being unsatisfied with, like, what he's currently doing, but we don't really feel it. There's, like, one scene where he's teaching a classroom and everyone's just kind of bored and he's like, fuck it, you know? But this is after the portal opens and the soldiers have been there for a bit, so everyone, of course, is out of it because they're like, what's the fucking point of doing anything? It has nothing to do with how Chris Pratt has been unsatisfied before this. So as much as he is a likable actor, and I saw the potential in his character to be something special, because I do like how certain aspects of his story, you know, matched up with him also having to forgive J.K. Simmons, his father, for certain things that happened in the past. But everything else about his character I just thought really fell flat. It made me start to think, like, you know what? Sam Richardson should have been the star of this movie, because he really is just a technician who has, like, no other experience in violence or anything like that. He should have been the star. Work up the humor so it feels a little more like Werewolves Within. and then throughout the movie, he's like, you know, it's like a buddy film with him and Edwin Hodge, who's like the more like, oh, super serious, I've been here 3 times thing. Like actually have like a deeply personal kind of connection with these two and have the movie be about maybe their friendship or whatever, you know, like, you know, do a Falcon and the Winter Soldier with that, you know. I don't know, like it just made me really question, like, why is Chris Pratt even here, really? So overall, I was kind of disappointed in this movie. I went in expecting things just because of the talent involved, and there are definitely some very impressive things about this movie from a technical level, but overall, I was just kind of meh on the story after a while, and I found just so many other places where it could have been better. They could have reworked it, and it could have been a much more interesting movie. But that's not the movie they were trying to do, obviously, which, you know, that's fine, but I think there's better movies to watch this weekend. Like, I know it's been kind of a bummer with The Forever Purge and this and The Boss Baby, but, you know, Werewolves Within, you can watch that at home right now. Fear Street Part 1, go ahead and watch that. I haven't seen Till Death yet, but I heard some pretty solid things about that. You can watch that instead, too. I'm gonna give The Tomorrow War a C. I was not particularly a fan of this. I wish it was a lot better. There's definitely avenues they could have taken to be better. But unfortunately, it just missed the mark. I definitely wish the best of luck to Chris McKay if he does another live-action movie like this. I think he definitely will have the skill to back it up. I just wish it's with a better story. But what did you think of The Tomorrow War? Leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.